Hi everyone, this is Jack with Team Empire, and today I am doing a video that JC actually mentioned in his Premium History Collection tier list, which is a tier list going over the decks in DBT 11 Clash of the Heroes. This is a really powerful encounter set that introduces two new regular decks, two new encounter decks, and upgrades all 5 of the Craycross Epic decks. But it also upgrades quite a few decks that you wouldn't really expect. So I'm going to be going over all of the decks that got upgrades in this set, which are around here. Don't worry, we are not going to be going over all of these decks down here. That is way too many, and a lot of these decks haven't changed. But we're going to be putting them in 4 tiers, which is heavy hitters, which are decks that I think will actually make an impact in the meta. We have good picks, which are decks you can definitely take to a tournament and do really well. They just have certain flaws that might drag them down in comparison to the meta decks. We have rogue decks, which aren't amazing decks, but they have really good matchups against certain other decks in the format. And then not worth it, which is self-explanatory. So we're going to be going over the first 2 decks because they both use the same support. We have Shojodoji and Megalonizuchi. So Shojodoji and Megalonizuchi got really good stealth support in set 11. We have a card called Dual Weapon, which is a grade 3 that allows you to recover your stealth cards from your bind zone into your hand. So it can not only recover Persona Rides, but it can also recover PGs, because the first starter deck UU, their PGs are stealth PGs. So you can add those back to your hand using its effect. We also have a Searcher double rare that, like, a counterblast 1, check top 5 for any stealth unit. And since the majority of your cards in your deck are stealth units, you can just thin those out of your deck. We also have a card that allows you to recover stealth units from your drop and put them into Soul, so you can bind them with Megalonizuchi or Shojodoji. And also allows you to draw a card. I think Shojodoji, after these 3 support cards, can definitely go into a good pick, because there are a couple things still dragging him down. He doesn't have a really good late game, which is kind of a problem. And some of the support does actually fix his late game, but he doesn't really have much of one. And the best thing going for Shojodoji is his early game. Shojodoji has one of the best ones. But also, he doesn't really do a lot when he's going first, besides having a really good rush. He doesn't really pick up any power unless your opponent's on grade 3. So that's why I think he's a good pick and not a heavy hitter, because there's other decks that can do a lot early, but also do a lot later on. And I think one of those decks is Megalonizuchi. This deck can not only have the early game that the regular Shojodoji has, because it uses Shojo's ride line, but it also can just have a really explosive turn 3 and call 2 unprecedents from the deck. So they are both 28k attackers that can attack from back row potentially, and allow you to Soul Blast 2, draw 2 cards. So it thins 4 cards out of your deck and just has really powerful attackers. I think Megalonizuchi is a really good pick, and we're already seeing it do some damage in the JP format. So I'm excited to see what people do with that deck in the English side. Then moving from one heavy hitter to another, I think Tamayuda also goes in a heavy hitter. I think Tamayuda is a really good deck in set 11. It got only 1 support card in set 11, but that one card is Will-O-Wisp Daybreak Tamayuda, which is a really powerful card. When you ride on top of the original, not only do you get Persona Ride, but you also can add any order from your deck to your hand. Meaning you can either add Broken Toys to recover some of your dolls if you don't have enough in in Soul, You can also recover Evanescent Light, which can Soul Blast 2 to call 2 dolls from drop zone. You can also use the Blitz Order. But speaking of Blitz Orders, that first effect can also search out Elementaria. And any deck that can search out Elementaria on a Persona Ride, I think is a really powerful deck. So yeah, it also just does what Tamayuda does, where it just calls the dolls for free. It no longer needs a CB anymore. Meaning you can conserve more of your CB or use it on your grade 1 dolls. It's a super powerful effect. I don't know what to say. I think Tamayuda was already a pretty decent deck, but now it's gotten only stronger by just making its costs free and being able to tutor anything from the deck. Next up is Vermilion. I think Vermilion definitely goes in good pick. Vermilion definitely has powerful aspects that I think make it a really good deck. Vermilion does have access to multi-attack using Rising Phoenix as long as you bind something. It does have access to pretty powerful attackers using stuff like Latifa, which is a triple rare from this set, which gets 5k power for each empty Rigard Circle your opponent has in the same column. So it can be a 20k to 30k attacker. It also can it also can deal your opponent damage even when they're on grade 2. So it allows you to immediately pressure them right away. Not much to say here. It's just a very powerful effect. Also, you can use this card is like the Eva killer. This whole deck is an Eva killer because it binds the rear guards that it attacks, and it also works against other intercepting decks as well. I think this deck, you would not have a bad time if you brought this deck. The only problem I can see with it is that if it gets rushed, it kind of doesn't really have any ways to come back until you get to grade 3. It does have access to Thunderstorm, which can be a 15k attacker, but that's really the only early game play this deck has. Maybe you could try splashing in some Brachia Forces in there, since I know that's one of Dragon Empire's best cards, best tools, but that's really the only problem I see with Vermilion. Other than that, I think it's a very solid deck. Next up is Musashi Armor. Musashi Armor is one of the budget decks that did get one support card in the set. And I still think he's not worth it, even though you can like copy a Persona Ride or something. Nowadays, especially nowadays in Standard, you want your turn 3 to actually do something. And Musashi Armor does not do anything on turn 3. He's just a vanilla. And even then, if you wanted to have an extra Persona Ride, you could just play something like Tamayuda, which already now has access to 4 copies of Persona Ride, if you play the 1 in the Ride deck and the 4 Will-O-Wisps. So, I just don't think this deck's worth it at all. The support card also allows you to, like, draw a card and then, like, gets 10k power or something, which is, like, no. Sorry, Musashi Armor fans. Luquier. Now, Luquier did get access to one support card in set 11, which I think is pretty decent. It's Jovial Juggler, which has an effect to where when it's called from the soul by the effect of your Vanguard, you can call it as a grade 0. And then when it's called, you can put a rear guard into the soul to call something else from your soul. So one of the problems with Luquier is that she had to call 3 different grades. So using this effect, you can call her as the grade 0, and then use her effect to put something else into soul to call the actual card you wanted to call from soul. Other than that, that's like the only real play I can see with that card. Just kind of fixes Luquier's effect. Other than that, I don't think it's that great. I think Luquier would probably go in like rogue tier. Because it's still not a bad deck. It can get like really big numbers using Rising Dragon. And it is a 4 attack deck, which is not nothing, you know. But I just don't think that support card does enough to really justify putting it any higher. It did get the generic from set 11, the one that like Soul Blast 3 when it attacks to draw 1, pick up 5k. I'm not sure how much you want to Soul Blast in Luquier, but that could be another card to consider because it also can check top 5 and call 1 from top deck as long as you play an order. And Luquier is one of those decks where you will play an order every single turn because you can play it from Soul. So that is something to consider, but I haven't seen a lot of lists use that, so I will still put Luquier in a rogue tier slot. Next up is Baphometis. Baphometis, for those of you who don't know what this card is, it basically gets 10k power when you shove 2 records into the soul, and it gets 10k power for every 3 grade 3s in your soul, and then you draw a card. And it also has like a guard restrict where it's Flagberg, where you need 3 to guard its attack. I mean, it's kind of like a fun deck, and you can use a lot of like really interesting generic Dark State support. And it did get one support card, which is a card that counts as a grade 3 on Rearguard Circle, Guardian Circle, and in Soul. So it helps his Soul requirement, and also because Baphometis gives 5k shield to all grade 3s, you can actually have it be a 10k shield, which is kind of nice. But even with that being said, I'm still going to put Baphometis in not worth it. Definitely above Musashi Armor though. The scale between Musashi Armor and Baphometis is like this to this. Like that's how much better Baphometis is than Musashi Armor. But I still don't think it's not that worth it. You could play other Dark States decks, even like budget ones that do a lot more than Baphometis does without minusing themselves. Speaking of a budget deck, here's Chronojet. I'm going to put Jet. Now, Jet's a little hard because it did get a support card, but the support card isn't that great. It's like when placed by a card effect, you can counterblast 1 to choose one of your units and give it 5k, which putting a counterblast cost in a deck that uses 2 CB every single turn makes it very easy to damage deny. But it does have a countercharge effect where if it hits, if your Vanguard's grade 4, you can countercharge. Now, that it might be pretty decent. I'm still going to put Jet in a heavy hitter because like it you got a support card, but it doesn't change anything about the deck. It's still like one of the best decks in the meta. It did get hit with the Brainwash Swirler recently, but I don't think that changes the fact that Jet is still an absurdly powerful deck that can just steamroll an opponent if they're not ready for it. And even if you are ready for it, they could just like high roll into triggers, or they could just like play out the long game and have the crest give them like 10, 15, 20k power to the front row. I still think Jet's just kind of crazy, and this new support card actually does give them an extra avenue to go for. Next up is Chaos. I think Chaos goes in good picks. I think Chaos, if this was Japan, I would put Chaos in a heavy hitter, because it's already making a lot of waves in Japan right now. And that is because they have access to the Will Dress promotional triggers, which have the names of the characters on them. So for instance, like Michiru is a draw trigger, right? But he also still is regarded as the Wily, or the Riley, what was it, like, Riley, that's the name of the draw trigger. So you basically have one card that counts as two names in the soul, and those are all the triggers. So Chaos became a lot more consistent in Japan, but because we don't have access to those yet, I'm still going to put Chaos in good picks, because the new Chaos is crazy. New Chaos basically does everything that people wanted New Chaos to do. It soul charges on Ride, it grabs something from soul, so you can grab Mikani back. It is an act skill now where you power up the whole board, so you can actually double dip on that power with your Mikanis. It gives Chaos a crit, which is really good, because one of the problems is that Chaos himself had no pressure, powers himself up. It just does a lot. Also, the support card for Chaos is really great. When it's placed, you counterblast one, look at top two, you put one into your hand, put one into your soul. Just very solid plussing engine. I just think Chaos is a really good, nice pick in this format. The problem is you do have to wait till turn 4, which sometimes Chaos can't survive. But if you're playing a little more defensively and just like high roll into this card on turn 4, you can really whittle down your opponent's defenses. Next up is Greedon. I think Greedon is also a good pick. I think Greedon actually goes right here above Vermilion, because he can Persona Ride on turn 3, because he's a mask deck now. He also has a much more consistent restand. You only need to shove 3 rearguards into your soul to get that restand and 5k power. You can use cards like Gomon, you can use cards like Inkane to get triple drive. You can use the new card from set 10 that can like bind itself to make your attack 2 to guard and retire rearguards. You can use your Dragon Tree Wretches, like your Skull Chem does, obviously search out your mask, but also get a Dragon Tree marker, therefore powering up your rearguards, which was always a problem in Greedon, even when they introduced multi-attack, because the rearguards always like were very weak. But now with the Dragon Tree markers, you can power them up a little more. You can use the other Dragon Tree Wretch, Demon Shrieder, which can not only create markers, but it can Soul Blast 2 to call a card from your soul, therefore reducing the amount of cards you have to play from your hand to use Greedon's effect. I just think Greedon's really powerful, and giving it more consistency and not having to waste as many cards from their hand to do their multi-attack is really powerful. Graham Grace. Graham Grace got one support card in set 11, and it's a card that says when it's placed, you soul charge 1 and give it 5k, which is like fine, I guess. Drilling Angel is just better because it also thins the deck potentially, and you can like put a card from drop, and Graham Grace already has a problem like going to deck out. So I'll still put Graham Grace in Rogue. I don't think it's like not worth it, because it does have the promo, like if it triple drive, it can get really big numbers on Persona Ride turns. I think it's Rogue tier. I don't think it's like that bad. I think Luquier is a little better. It might be a little more consistent than Graham Grace is, but I think Graham Grace still goes there. Oh, now we get to Minerva. Minerva is definitely the heavy hitter out of the heavy hitters. In fact, I'll actually move. We'll debate if we move up Jet, because I think the problem. I'll talk about why Jet's right there in a second. But Minerva is 100% like one of the best decks, if not the best deck in set 11. It got one support card in set 11, and that card is absolutely crazy. That card, when it's placed, you can counterblast 1, soul blast 1, draw a card, choose a card from your hand, and call it. And then like, which is already really good, but then it has an effect that when it boosts, at the end of the battle it boosted, you can shove the column into the soul to choose a card with Genesis and add it to your hand. So you get a card immediately to use with Minerva's effect. And because her first effect actually does Soul Blast, you can use the effect of either Melissa or Chamomile to immediately call a board back. Overall, that's just a super powerful effect. It makes Minerva's restand a lot more consistent. And Minerva's restand was already scary. Like, it already was scary. It could power up the front row. It can restand. It just really powerful. It has deck manipulation too. It just does a lot. I think Minerva definitely goes in heavy hitter. I might not be doing enough to sell how powerful that support card is, but you'll know once you play against it how like absurd that card feels, because it just gives Minerva so much value and allows them to make her restand so much more consistent. It also got access to that promo recently in English, which the promo is like not only absurd in terms of like what it does for the deck, but also absurd in terms of prices. It's going for like 50 or 60, I think. Ooh, now we get to the Graya. The Graya, I would really put the Graya probably in. I'd put it in Rogue. I think it goes in Rogue, and the reason why is because I know all of the Craycross Epic Evolutions basically all become turn 4 decks for their most powerful effects, but they at least have other turn 3 plays. And the Graya just doesn't. Like, you're going to go on the light every time, and the light always just looks at top 5 and calls 1 to 2, which is like fine, but it doesn't do anything to actually push the offensive more than other decks can. And while her Persona Ride effect is really powerful, being able to Persona Ride twice and get 30k power to the front row and 4 draws if you have the grade 3 set order, it still is a turn 4 deck, and Graya doesn't draw enough cards to actually justify like having to survive that long. There's also other decks like, we'll talk about Ezel, which can immediately go into the grade 3 and Persona Ride while the opponent's potentially on turn 2. And this one has to wait till turn 4 to get a really powerful Persona Ride, but you probably didn't get your opponent to high enough damage to where that would matter. I don't know, maybe I'm just bugging here. Maybe I'm like haven't faced enough Grayas yet, but I just don't think that it doesn't solve enough of the deck's actual problems. But now we have Ezel. Ezel, I'm also going to say Ezel is Rogue. I don't think Ezel is not worth it. I think Ezel has its problems, which people have made very clear, and I definitely agree with them. Ezel has the problem to where if it's going second, depending on what you're facing, you could actually hurt yourself more than help yourself, because Ezel does have a early ride, and it can ride to grade 3, but the problem is it doesn't do anything until you've been on grade 3 for like one whole turn, and then it doesn't get its actual multi-attack until your opponent's on grade 3. So if you're going first, you'll ride to grade 3 while your opponent's on grade 1, but you only get one drive check. Then on your next turn, you can look at top 3 and call 1, which is fine. You'll get Twin Drive and Persona Ride. But then you'll have to wait till your opponent's on grade 3 to actually get the multi-attack where you call from top 7. And that's a lot to wait for, but even that is better than what happens when you go second. Like, imagine going second against a deck like Jet, where they need the opponent's Vanguard to be on grade 3 to Stride. Then you could just ride up. You ride up to grade 3 while they're on grade 2, and you don't have any good offense on that turn. You're just a one-drive Vanguard. You can maybe put Sages in the deck, which can help, but it won't kill them. And then Jet can just Stride immediately, which normally they couldn't do if they were going first. I don't know. To me, it's just there's a lot of decks in Standard that are balanced by the fact that they need to wait for the opponent to be on grade 3, and you giving them access to that effect on their turn 3 might be a little too powerful for them and give them too much benefits to even justify Ezel. Next up, we have Archite, starting for Brandgate. Archite, I think, it got like 2 support cards. One of them's decent. It allows it to like, when it's put into the order zone, you can give your Vanguard 5k, which is like fine, but you don't really want to have that card in your deck, since the thing about Archite is you want to play at least somewhat multiple copies of your monsters, so when you call one, you can put one back and give it power. The other card's pretty decent. It's like a Jewel Core for the deck. It gets 5k power when it attacks or boosts, but then like retires itself at the end of the battle. And also it allows you to power up Archite. So I think Archite probably goes in Rogue. Definitely above Luquier. Messiah. I think Messiah got a really good support card. Unlike Jet, where I think got kind of like a mid support card, I think Messiah got a really good support card. When that card is retired from Guardian Circle, you can Soul Blast 1 to call it to rearguard, and then when your Grade 4 Vanguard attacks, you can shove it to Soul to give your Vanguard 5k, giving the Soul back that it used when it guarded. But even then, it's basically just another Mikani. On your first Grade 4 turn, you could just call it, and then immediately use the effect to put into Soul to get some power, and then use Alter Ego's effect to draw multiple cards. So I still think that I think this goes into the top of good. I think it'll stay at the top of good. Because Messiah still has its problems where, especially when it comes to Jet, if you don't stride in Jet, you'll still be fine because Jet has this absurd guard restrict. But if you don't stride in Messiah, you're going to have major problems. Like if you whiff. Eva, oh boy. Remember when people thought Eva was going to be like the best deck forever? Man, that was crazy. Eva got a pretty decent evolution. It allows it to like search a research card when it's Persona Ride, or when Persona Ride's in the old one. It also allows you to call Obscurity from hand, deck, or drop, which is a lot, and gives it 5k, which is pretty good. But on compared to the old Eva, it just doesn't have it pushes the offensive, which is good, but it also doesn't have any of the defensive power the old one had. The old one has its really amazing first skill, where counterblast 1, look at top 3, look at top X, and then add 1 to your hand, which can be a combo piece to help extend your plays, or it could be a PG, it can be a trigger if you get to that point in the game state. It can be like an Obscurity or something. I just think this deck, it might as well have only gotten one support card because it got that double rare, but the double rare isn't that good. Basically just allows you to like call an Obscurity to Guardian Circle from drop, which is like turns into a 15k, which is fine, but I'm not sure if Eva would want to play that. It also got access to the Blitz Order package, which is pretty nice. I think there are some decks that could play that. So overall, I'm going to put Eva in good picks. I still think Eva's a really good deck. And I'm going to put it right next to Chaos. I don't know which one is actually better, but I'm going to put it right next to each other. Next up, we have Gigant Arms. I'm sorry, Gigant Arms fans. I'm going to have to put this in Rogue. I think this deck is kind of decent because it does get a really big Vanguard attack and can reuse the Arms effects multiple times. But the problem is Gandiva is also still in the meta, and this deck can like hard lose to Gandiva since it still keeps its arm cards on the rearguard circle at the end of its turn. On top of that, it just doesn't also like do that much in comparison to some other decks. I think it'll get better once we get cards like the Drill, which we see in the manga, but as of right now, the deck looks like a super fun budget deck and like a really good deck to get into Vanguard. But I don't think it does enough yet. Oh, but next up we have Dangler Fish. I don't even remember his name. Put him on Not Worth It. He got a support card where it's like if your Vanguard's original power is 15k or greater, it gets like 10k power. Honestly, feels more like a Messiah support card than it does this guy. But he's not worth it. I'm not going to talk about him anymore. Maelstrom. I honestly think Maelstrom's promo is the best part about its new support, and not really any of the support that it got. It got like a new kind of inlet pulse where if it attacks on the 5th battle or more, it gets like 10k power. Then you can like retire it at the end of the turn to draw, which is like decent, but we already have enough draws, and I think giving it even more could lead to the problem of deck out, which I already see in Maelstrom. And we did get a set order searcher, which I think is good as like a one of, because also search it from drop, and sometimes you have to discard the set order either for ride deck or for PGs. So in that case, I'm going to put Maelstrom in Rogue. As much as my bias is coming in, I'm going to put it in Rogue, and I'm going to put it honestly above Ezel. I think it's the best in Rogue right now. Now we have Claudine. This is a card that is coming out with Megalonizuchi as a promo for set 11 format. This is a really decent deck. It can like span the board with planet tokens, give all the planet tokens 5k, get triple drive, play a lot of orders. Do I think the deck's amazing or anything? No, but it does get 4 attacks, it does get triple drive, so it can just high roll and sack. I'm not quite sure where to put it yet. I'm going to put it in... I'm going to put it in Rogue. I'm going to put it in Rogue because it can rush, but the problem is it doesn't actually draw that many cards. It has to use a lot of resources to get a lot of things going. Roa. Alright, this is where it gets kind of interesting. Roa? I think Roa probably goes in a good pick. I know a lot of people are going to be saying, but Gandiva. I know. But Roa... Gandiva doesn't actually start retiring stuff until turn 3. And if Roa's going first, or if they're going second even, and they use stuff like mushrooms, they use their ride line, they can just like beat a lot of these decks before they even have a chance to like breathe. I think Roa goes in good picks. I think it goes right here. The Persona Ride, like the new Persona Ride form it got, is also really insane. It calls 2, gives them the effect to where if they're retired you can draw, and then allows you to power up a Moke and himself and give himself a crit for free. All of this is for free, by the way, which is really crazy. So not only does Roa have like one of the best rush turns in early games in the game, but it also now has a really good finisher, because that was the main problem with Roa, is that it did not have a finisher. Now we have a deck that I love, Luzulu. I think this deck is so fun, but I can't play favorites here. I have to put Luzulu below Gigant Arms in the Rogue tier. I still think it can do really well, especially against decks that don't retire, because being able to maintain your board and get a Persona Ride every single turn, making them discard 1, and just getting really good multi-attacks is great. Also being able to reuse some of your effects is really amazing. The main problem that I see with this deck is, again, Gandiva. Even with Gigant Arms, if they retire your arms, the set order can just go into Soul to call 2 from drop. So you can still have recovery tools. This deck really doesn't. If this deck goes first against Gandiva, you will be able to get the discard skill 1 time and then never again. And if you're going second, you will never get the discard skill. You basically got to use Luzulu's Ride as not like a way to get to that discard skill, but more of a way of just plussing, which is good, but not enough to beat a deck like Gandiva. But again, I still like the deck. I still think you can do pretty well with the deck, especially, like I said, against decks that don't have a lot of access to retire. But as of right now, it's just kind of like a meh deck. Now we have Shield Fisher. Shield Fisher got a card that says Counterblast 1, call something from drop and give, or call itself from drop and give it plus 5k. So you can actually use Shield Fisher's, you can actually attack with Shield Fisher, I should say. But as of that, I'm going to put it in not worth it, but I am going to put it above Musashi Armor and the Dangler Fish because anything goes above them. And the last one we have is Dragon Tree. Dragon Tree did get a support card. It got the really good Blitz order. I actually played this deck for BRO, went X3. That's what we're talking about, baby. Repping the team well. It's a deck I love, but I know it's not that great. And even with the Blitz order, I would still say this deck is not worth it, but I would definitely put it above Baphometis, especially since we know that this deck is going to get some major support in set 13, but obviously we're not factoring that in. We're only factoring the Blitz order. Well, actually, no, I've convinced myself. I'm going to put it in the bottom of Rogue, because with the Blitz order and with the support from stuff like Brancate and Stoicheia, who have the Blitz order searchers, the deck becomes a little more tanky. Also, because of the Blitz order, you could actually play less Dragon Tree Wretches, because you already spam the board with Dragon Tree markers a lot with the Blitz order, and with the Wretches you already have, so you can play more cards that either get more shield, more cards that draw more cards. Just, I think there's a little more options now, and every single set, Dragon Tree will get better, because it is the generic deck, pretty much. It uses all generic support. But with that being said, guys, that is it for the video. Let me explain real quick before I leave why I think Jet is the bottom of heavy hitters, and that is because he hasn't really changed that much. The problem is that the new support card doesn't do enough to actually push Jet more than he already is. Oh, wait. I forgot about the remnants. Yeah, there's these 3 new cards. One of them, they're all The grade 1 allows you to search top 5 for any of the remnants, which is like the bat, the knight, or the demon. The demon allows you to rest a grade 2, the grade 2 knight, to get 10k in a crit. And then the grade 2, when it's rested, you can counterblast 1 to stand it and give it 5k. So this deck actually got a really good turn 3. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to change my rankings. I'm going to put Jet above Megalonizuchi. I'm going to put Jet right here. I think because of the remnant support, if you want to try it out, Jet becomes a lot more fun and a lot more explosive on turn 3. I did forget about that, but I'm glad I remembered in time. But with that finally being said, thank you so much for watching my long video. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think about my tier list, and let me know what y'all think about set 11 and the support that was given to your favorite deck in set 11. See you on the next one. Bye, guys.